As always, I am your host, Peter DiBiasi. Make sure you guys follow us on social media at Talking Sports PD on X and on Instagram. The link is in the description. Make sure you follow us on Apple Podcast and Spotify. And as always, we are sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. Use code TSB for a 100% deposit match up to $100. Get on Underdog Fantasy. Link is in the description. Road to 6,000 subscribers, so make sure you guys like, make sure you guys comment, and make sure you guys subscribe to the YouTube channel. This is going to be a quick one, 5 to 10 minutes. If you can tell by the thumbnail, if you can tell by the title, talking college football. We are talking college football. We are talking James Franklin to Virginia Tech. The news broke Monday evening. It was rumored for multiple weeks. If you're in the Virginia Tech football landscape, if you're on social media, if you're in the college football landscape, there's been rumblings. There's been rumblings that there is a potential match made in heaven between James Franklin and Virginia Tech. Take a step back. Brent Pry was fired from Virginia Tech in his year 4 after 3 games. A loss to South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and Old Dominion kind of did him in there. James Franklin gets unexpectedly fired after losing a couple games at Penn State. James Franklin loses to Oregon in overtime at home, and then their team was kind of dead on arrival. They lose to UCLA on the West Coast next week, and then they come home and they lose to Northwestern. And then that was it. That was it for James Franklin. And I'm not going to sit here and say, I'm going to agree, I'm going to disagree, I'm going to say that was the right move for Penn State. There is a chance we look back in 5 years and Penn State regretted moving on from James Franklin. But here we are. It's November 18th. You guys will be listening to this November 19th, and James Franklin is the head football coach at Virginia Tech. And if you told me this, if you told anybody this, August 18th, that before Thanksgiving, James Franklin would be, 1, not a member of the Penn State Nittany Lions, you would be shocked. And 2, would be the head coach of Virginia Tech, you would think that person would be on some sort of substance, some sort of alcohol, some sort of substance. They're not. They would have been right. They would have been dead right, and they should have bought a lottery ticket if they told you that on August 18th. This is groundbreaking stuff for a Virginia Tech program. A Virginia Tech program that in the past, if you grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s, into 2010 to 2014, sustained great success under Frank Beamer and a little bit of Justin Fuente. The likes of Michael, Marcus Fick, Tyrod Taylor, Sean Glennon, Jared Boykin, David Wilson, Cam Chancellor. This team was fighting for ACC championship games. They were winning ACC championship games. And they would have been in a 12-team playoff. They were always a top 10, top 15 team for 15, 20 straight years. 1999 national championship, winning ACC championship games. But obviously, in an era when they were good, it was the BCS era. So making a national championship in the BCS era, if you don't know, it was the top 2 teams, and that was it. And then they weren't good in the 4-team era outside of 1 or 2 years when they went to the ACC championship game under Justin Fuente, but weren't ever nearly good enough to make, obviously, the 4-team playoff. And then the last couple of years, since the 12-team playoff started last year, they weren't good. And now we have a new era of college football. We're talking about a coach in James Franklin. And you ask a Penn State fan, if I walk down my street and ask a Penn State fan, they would criticize James Franklin. They would say he didn't win the big game. He couldn't get us over the hump. He just wasn't great in big moments. And they don't give credit to what James Franklin did. And a little bit of credit to Bill O'Brien as well. But James Franklin came from Vanderbilt, was a program builder at Vanderbilt. And credit to Clark Lee, who's doing a tremendous job at Vanderbilt now. But a program builder at Vanderbilt, who was a dormant program for 30-plus years, comes to Penn State and takes over a program that saw the worst scandal and sanctions we have ever seen in the history of college football. They were coming out of an era, and an era where you can't even talk about it half the time because how bad the situation that was in Penn State and that James Franklin was walking into. He resurrected that program. He's a program builder. He's an elite recruiter. He had 6 years of 10-plus win seasons. James Franklin was in the semifinals of the college football playoff. They lost in the Big Ten championship last year to Oregon. Played in the first round, won. Played in the quarterfinals, won. and they lost in the semifinals. And they had the ball at the end of that game, and Drew Alward threw a costly interception that led to a Notre Dame victory. They were in that game. They had a chance to go play for a national championship. Fast forward a year, James Franklin is a member of the Virginia Tech Hokies. And this is something, as a Virginia Tech fan, when they fired Brent Pry and when James Franklin got fired from Penn State, I jokingly said to some people, what if they go after Franklin? And I was joking. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I knew it was happening 2 months ago. No, I had no idea. I had no idea it was happening. I didn't even know it was a realistic possibility. But I said it jokingly. I was honest to God. I said, well, that would be kind of a cool hire. Yeah, it would be a great hire. Never thought in my wildest dreams that James Franklin would ever consider Virginia Tech and would ever sign with Virginia Tech. You can argue all you want. James Franklin is a top 10 college football coach. James Franklin is a top 10 college football coach. He's not Kirby Smart. He's not Ryan Day. That's okay. There's only a handful of coaches, 3 to be exact, that are currently active head coaches that have won a national championship. It's Dabo Swinney, it's Ryan Day, and it's Kirby Smart. There are 3 active head coaches, 3 active head coaches that have won a national championship. So don't tell me he hasn't won the national championship. Unless you're a Georgia, Clemson, and Clemson fans, and I have your Dabo Swinney right now, and I did a podcast on that about a month ago. Unless you're a Georgia, Ohio State fan who wanted to run Ryan Day out about a year ago, if you're a Georgia, Ohio State, or Clemson fan, guess what? Your coach hasn't won a national championship either. He hasn't. James Franklin is a top 10 head coach. Is he 6? Is he 10? I don't care. I don't know. It doesn't matter. He's a top 10 head coach, and he's here to resurrect the Virginia Tech program that has won 10-win season or 10-plus win season in the last 14 years. This is a dormant program that is flushing in a ton of money from donors. They had a guy come out recently said he's pushing 10. He just donated $10 to $20 million. They announced they are donating $250 million of money into the athletic program. This is a dormant program. This is a dormant fan base that is itching to get back on top. And in a conference with the ACC, in a conference that we have seen right now is very winnable, there are some very talented teams in Miami and Georgia Tech. Clemson has taken a step back. Florida State is a complete mess right now. This conference is completely up for grabs. We saw last year SMU and Clemson in the ACC championship game. And then Clemson takes a step back, and maybe SMU makes it this year. Maybe it's Georgia Tech. We have seen a conference that is very much up for grabs. If you win 10, 11, 9 to 11 games at Virginia Tech consistently, you're never going to be fired. You're never going to be on the hot seat. And something that is great for what James Franklin is bringing to Virginia Tech. I mentioned he's a program builder. Virginia Tech needs to build back up. That is a perfect fit there. He's an elite recruiter. Something that Virginia Tech fans and people around the program have clamored for under the Fuente and Pride. We have to recruit the state of Virginia better. There's a ton of in-state talent in Virginia. You know who's been the best recruiter or best team at recruiting in the state of Virginia in the last 10 years? That's Penn State. Who was the head coach at Penn State that was recruiting in Virginia? James Franklin. So James Franklin is an elite recruiter. In the last 5 years, their average recruiting class on 24/7 Sports is 12.75. Virginia Tech has won top 25 class since 2014. I'm going to say that again. In the last 5 years, for Penn State's average recruiting class is 12.75. We can round up. We'll say it's 13. Last 5 years, they have the 13th best recruiting class. Virginia Tech has won top 25 class since 2014. Let that sink in and let that kind of marinate what James Franklin can bring to this program. He recruits DMV tremendously. You have Virginia fans, you have Maryland fans, you have Penn State fans are like, oh boy, we get a lot of recruits in the DMV area where James Franklin excels. And now he's there at Virginia Tech, and they don't have to go that far to come to a guy they were leaving the state of Virginia to go to Pennsylvania. They don't even have to leave the state of Virginia now. They just have to go down to Blacksburg and play for Virginia Tech and James Franklin. It is a tremendous situation. It is a tremendous hire. It's a hire that most Virginia Tech fans never thought was ever a possibility. And he's here. They have a top 10 head coach just fall in their lap. And you know what? Credit to Virginia Tech. And I like Brent Pry. I think he was perfect for the program. I think he's a tremendous human being. It just didn't work out on the coaching side of the things, which is obviously super important. And he was actually very helpful in getting James Franklin and Virginia Tech. I love what Brent Pry stood for. I love his attitude. I thought he was a perfect fit, and it just didn't work out for Virginia Tech. But they fired him 3 games into the year. They fired him 3 games into the year and got this coaching search going fast. And then James Franklin got fired a couple weeks later, and they're like, well, we don't have a coach right now. We can start doing this. While other teams are marinating over the fact, do we fire our coach? Do we keep him for another year? What do we do? How do we kind of do this? And then you get James Franklin of Virginia Tech. And you're going to look back, and we can talk about this December come January, and we're going to do a ton of college football content once conference championship and playoff season rolls around on the actual field and not coaching search, the actual football field. There's going to be teams that miss out on their top targets. If it's Florida, if it's LSU, if it's Auburn, if it's Arkansas, that we're wondering, why didn't we go after James Franklin harder? It's a fair statement. It is a fair statement. And Penn State might be thinking in 5 years, did we downgrade a head coach? Because in my opinion, the head coach that Penn State brings in 2025 to 2026, the rumored head coaches are not better than James Franklin because they're not getting Lane Kiffin. And I think Lane Kiffin's on par with James Franklin. I don't think there's a much of a difference between Lane Kiffin and James Franklin. A lot of people tell you that's true. It's really not, in my opinion. We're not comparing Kirby Smart to James Franklin. We're comparing Lane Kiffin to James Franklin. There's a lot of similarities there, in my opinion. I don't know who on the market is an upgrade for James Franklin. And I get it. They had to move on. It was time. Your time ran out. It was needed for a change at Penn State. And I understand all of that. I get that. I'm not naive to that concept. But maybe it was a downgrade. I'm going to pull a couple tweets out here before we get out of here, guys. Make sure you guys like, make sure you guys comment, and make sure you guys subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let me know what you guys think about James Franklin of Virginia Tech. I think it's an absolute A+++ home run hire for Virginia Tech. I just never thought in my wildest dreams as a Virginia Tech fan and as a college football fan that James Franklin of Virginia Tech was ever a possibility. So sorry if you're an Apple Podcast, but look, all of a sudden, Virginia Tech's recruiting. They have multiple on Rivals, on 3, and on 24/7. 4-star quarterback Troy Hun. I'm just using this as an example. I'm not saying like whatever. There's going to be more to come. I'm using this as an example. A day later after they hire him, multiple crystal balls to Virginia Tech. He's rated 228 nationally according to 24/7. A 4-star quarterback in the 2026 class, the 15th overall quarterback in that class. I'm using this as an example to tell you James Franklin and company and the staff he brings and the general manager he brings and the director of player personnel he brings, they're not messing around. They're going to get right after it. There's been a ton of guys visiting this Saturday for the Miami game. They are not messing around here in Blacksburg. So this is a guy that is an example of a guy that has multiple crystal ball predictions. If you don't know what that means, it's just recruiting guys predicting he's going to commit to Virginia Tech. Former Penn State commit. A lot of guys from the current roster from Penn State are going to follow Franklin. A lot of commits. They've had about 18 decommits since Franklin was fired that are going to potentially follow Franklin. Not all of them, but a handful of them follow Franklin, which was a very good recruiting class, a top 20 recruiting class to Virginia Tech. We got guys here. We got Tom Fernelli saying James Franklin is a great hire for Virginia Tech. I have no idea. You have RG3 coming and saying, Virginia. Fernelli said, I have no idea if it will work out, but he said it's a great hire for Virginia Tech. Obviously, we have no idea if it's going to work out. You have RG3 saying Virginia Tech will become an ACC contender year in and year out with James Franklin as head coach. Dabo Swinney, he's even said on his press conference today, he's a winner. He's won everything. He's won everywhere he's been. James Franklin knows the bones and the guts of how to get a program going. Shout out to my guy Drift VT over here. Imagine if someone, and I mentioned this about 5 minutes ago. Imagine if someone told you 3 months ago that James Franklin would be the head coach at Virginia Tech before Thanksgiving. I said they would be on some sort of substance because it would have been ludicrous to me. More on Dabo. He's a winner. I know he hasn't won the championship, but he was a play away from playing it from it last year. Like I mentioned, says it's a great move for everyone involved. Franklin, VT, and the ACC. It's a great move for the ACC. Your former players, Tony Rojas, Anthony Donko, Drew Aller, Drew Shelton, all posted on their Instagrams stories for James Franklin to Virginia Tech. And this is something that I kind of want to end on here. The love that James Franklin and his players share. You don't have the hate that potentially we had with LSU and Brian Kelly and the fallout there. Franklin loves his players. Players love Franklin. You saw that by the 18 decommits in the 2026 class. You didn't see that with Billy Napier in Florida, and you have not seen that with Brian Kelly or an LSU or Hugh Freeze and Auburn. The players love James Franklin. They weren't going to Penn State for Penn State. I'm sorry to break it for you. They were not going to Penn State for Penn State. They were going to Penn State for James Franklin, and now they're going to Virginia Tech for James Franklin. That's enough said there. That's where Virginia Tech is. That is where Penn State is, and that's the state of this. It's a remarkable turn event, and I know I'm excited. I'm a Virginia Tech fan, and I get it. And if you're not a Virginia Tech fan, you're like, why do we care? Because it's exciting for college football. You get a conference that has been very up and down, very hit or miss, very exciting in my opinion. And I know the national championship winner is not coming out of the ACC, but who freaking cares? I mean, in this year, it's not coming out of the ACC, but who cares? It's fun, exciting football. Friday night shenanigans on the ACC, on ESPN. It's exciting football. And James Franklin and company are bringing another program back to life, potentially in the ACC. So Virginia Tech walks away with a program builder, a recruiter that recruits tremendously in Virginia and the DMV area, and a top 10 college football head coach. This is a dormant program that might be on the climb up in Virginia Tech, but it's just something that I think was super exciting. And you know what's super exciting? Following us on social media. So make sure you guys follow us on social media at Talking Sports PD on X and on Instagram. Links are in the description. And as always, Underdog Fantasy, shout out to our sponsor. Use code TSP for 100% deposit match up to $100 on Underdog Fantasy. Link is in the description. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, download the episode, subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, like, comment, and please subscribe. You guys killed it in the last episode. NBA season predictions, 13,000 views. So appreciate you guys all watching. Hopefully this does just as well. If it doesn't, it's not the end of the world, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. It's November. We're getting close to December. You know what December means? Conference championship of college football, playoff time. I'm going to react to all the coaching hirings, not in a single episode. This is just big because it's where it is and me being a Virginia Tech fan. But once the dust settles in the coaching cycle, we'll do a tier list of like we did for the NFL last year. College football playoff. We're going to do an episode for the first round, for the quarterfinals, for the semifinals, and for the championship. Obviously, NFL content coming your way. MLB postseason, MLB offseason reactions, kind of how the offseason shakes out and how that kind of goes. And we'll recap the offseason for you guys. So don't go anywhere. I know I've been gone for a couple of weeks, but do not go anywhere. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Follow us on all platforms. Everything is in the description. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. I'm stoked. I think this is a tremendous hire for Virginia Tech and something that would be tremendous for you guys to do. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hopefully you guys have a great Thanksgiving holiday season. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.